McDonald's is shutting down its experimental beverage-led restaurant concept after about a year and a half.
McDonald's is struggling. The brand is reporting a drop in sales worldwide. They're down by 1%. McDonald's shares have tanked by 15%. Why? Because customers find their burgers too expensive now, and many prefer to eat at home instead.
McDonald's U.S. sales fell for the largest time in 5 years due to a minor E. coli infection. Demand dropped on Monday, and diners were wary. U.S. fourth quarter spending and comparable sales decreased 1.4%. It is with great sadness that we announce the trembling of the Golden Arches. A trade conflict has escalated into a cultural clash. China and India, two of the world's fastest-growing economies, have declared intentions to impose 300% tariffs on us, fast food imports, and McDonald's. McDonald's was more than burgers for decades. It symbolized convenience capitalism, American living, and our influence from Shanghai to New Delhi. That symbol will be a target in 2025. Beijing officials proposed taxing all McDonald's products, from beef patties to cheese to packaging. New Delhi lawmakers justified the action as cultural independence and economic preservation. It's not fries and milkshakes. A matter of pride. The issue is power. The question is whether national symbols can rule another nation's streets. Tariffs once gave Washington leverage, but now they've created a new battleground where symbols are at stake. McDonald's, a $200 billion chain with over 40,000 locations, faces a crisis in Asia. Imagine the aftermath. Beijing. Big Mac. Prices triple overnight. Mumbai middle-class households must reconsider buying Happy Meals. Wall Street investors are debating billions in market value loss with every headline and social media post. Is this protectionism or the birth of a multipolar cultural order where no logo is safe? Tariffs are testing America's soft power. Burgers become weapons, not dinner. The true story is whose culture shapes the future, as Washington's response and Trump's personal reaction could determine whether McDonald's thrives as a worldwide behemoth or becomes a cautionary tale. Stay tuned. This is more than fast food. Subscribe, like, and share. A worldwide identity battle is underway. Within hours of Beijing and New Delhi imposing 300% tariffs on U.S. burgers, the White House moved into emergency mode, and Donald Trump, never one to back down, went to the cameras. His statements were direct and powerful. This goes beyond burgers. This attack on the American way of life behind the Oval Office doors prompted aides to craft a counterstrike by the next morning. Leaked memos indicated a proposal to impose 200% tariffs on Chinese steel, consumer products, and electronics worth hundreds of billions in yearly commerce. If you attack America's symbols, America will damage your supply chains. But retaliation costs. With inflation already affecting families from Ohio to Arizona, Wall Street economists warned that imposing taxes on steel and electronics will raise prices on households, phones, laptops, refrigerators, and other necessities by double digits. Critics said this might punish Americans more than pressure them. Beijing Trump said with a customary flourish, "We will not budge." He announced on live TV, backed by American flags and steel belt CEOs, that the issue was a sovereignty test, evoking Cold War battles. Signs were as important as missiles. Trump supporters saw defiant, patriotic, uncompromising Trump. But the markets disagreed. The Dow Jones fell over 500 points in one day, wiping out billions in retirement accounts. Meanwhile, soybean farmers and auto manufacturers worried that the cycle of retaliation would trap them in a global chess game again. And the bigger question was whether defending a burger chain was worth destabilizing trillion-dollar trade flows, or whether McDonald's had become the perfect proxy for a conflict over global power. Washington had established a line in the sand, and the world would see how far Trump would go. The New Delhi shock followed. Leaks from India's Ministry of Commerce suggested more than China's tariff assault as Washington prepared. India may directly target McDonald's like China. Timing wasn't random. Indian policymakers have complained about American fast food chains' domination in their cities for years. McDonald's has over 80 stores in Mumbai, dwarfing domestic competitors that struggle with supply chains and marketing muscle. India is prepared to draw its own red line to encourage local champions and exhibit cultural freedom. The plan may prohibit McDonald's beef alternatives, dairy inputs, packaging materials, and other imports costing hundreds of millions of dollars, according to insiders. Justification is evident. Should India's 1.4 billion people eat under an American banner when Haldiram's or Burger Singh may shine? Geopolitics is deeper. India's support for Beijing's 300% tariff shock shows its willingness to pressure Washington, even if both countries compete in Asia. New Delhi analysts see this as a geopolitical experiment for China and India, two ancient adversaries, to temporarily cooperate against American cultural domination. The stakes are huge. McDonald's global model could collapse if China and India, with roughly 3 billion consumers, abandon the brand. McDonald's growing revenue is estimated to be over a third from Asia by Wall Street. A concerted public protest might remove billions from its valuation overnight, and the social impact is similar. Imagine middle-class Delhi families losing Happy Meals or seeing costs quadruple, while politicians claim patriotism against foreign influence. Some call it economic nationalism. Others see it as prideful protectionism. India no longer wants to be a market. It wants to rule. If India joins China in this symbolic battle, it raises the question of whether a new axis of power may rewrite trade and the global order. A tariff dispute in Beijing and New Delhi threatens to become a global uprising. In Sao Paulo, Brazil's Ministry of Agriculture is rumoring new restrictions on U.S. fast food imports, echoing the Chinese playbook. In Moscow, state media is cheering the collapse of America's burger empire, framing it as proof that Western consumer culture is losing its grip. In Pretoria, South African lawmakers are already talking about food sovereignty, which could lead to bans, taxes, or both. McDonald's is no longer the focus. Over 40% of the world's population and nearly a third of its GDP are in Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. If these governments collaborate even loosely, a corporate headache may become a systemic shock for one of America's most powerful cultural exports. Europe is scared. Brussels has avoided taking sides, but officials admit the risk behind closed doors. McDonald's in France and Germany uses transatlantic supply chains, U.S. corn, Canadian beef, and Italian packaging machines. These chains could collapse, hurting restaurants, farmers, truckers, and manufacturers across the continent. Even the EU is divided. Paris and Berlin are subtly criticizing Washington's harsh reprisal. They fear inflation, supply disruptions, and political cost. As mindlessly following Trump, Southern Europe is increasingly dependent on us, brains, and processed commodities. Be cautious. Brussels' silence isn't neutral. Indecision hides a gap that could grow as the crisis continues. McDonald's may not merely decline if BRICS advances and Europe moves away from Washington. When burgers become symbols, the question isn't simply whether McDonald's survives, but whether America's cultural dominance can withstand the shockwaves. Not in Beijing or New Delhi. American heartland was hit. McDonald's goes beyond quick food. It's a major buyer of Nebraska livestock, Idaho potatoes, and Wisconsin dairy. This horror repeated for farmers who survived trade conflicts with China in 2018. Contracts worth billions might go quickly. In late August 2025, agricultural lobbies were on edge. Lost access to China and India, the two fastest-growing markets, may cut farm income by double digits, according to the American Farm Bureau Federation. Cattle ranchers predicted oversupply, while potato producers anticipated mountains of unsold crops. McDonald's sneezes give us pneumonia, said one agricultural leader. The stress affected Ohio packaging firms, Illinois logistics firms, and Minnesota dairy processors that depend on McDonald's global network. If tariffs choke Asia, manufacturers lose volume, workers lose shifts, and communities lose tax money. Corporate conflict abroad became a jobs crisis at home. McDonald's executives wrote to the White House that if the Chinese and Indian markets collapsed, the brand could lose tens of billions in market value, which would ripple across Wall Street, hitting pension funds, ETFs, and small investors. JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs analysts flagged McDonald's stock as high risk within days. Fear was about financial contagion, not burgers. Political pressure increased. Agriculture lobbyists wanted subsidies. Legislators from farm states urged Trump to find a solution. But with inflation already affecting households and midterm elections approaching, the White House was forced to endorse McDonald's, which critics say risks a rural revolt that might change states. No longer a trade story. A domestic crisis distorted farms, factories, and financial markets. In China and India, the propaganda war was expanding beyond trade halls and stock markets as the backlash mounted. State television in Beijing aired regular programs portraying McDonald's as a symbol of Western cultural invasion. Anchors painted every burger as American hubris and every Happy Meal as a subtle erasure of Chinese culture. Millions watched the stark message, but the real fire spread online. Boycott hashtags on Weibo and Douyin garnered billions of views, while influencers lauded Chinese alternatives with patriotic slogans. Videos of young consumers throwing McDonald's fries in the trash went viral. The campaign went beyond propaganda. It touched into a deeper undercurrent of animosity, a sense that eating under the golden arches was no longer harmless fun, but a betrayal of Indian national pride. Changing the story. Entrepreneurs acted quickly. Local fast food entrepreneurs advertised as the patriotic alternative burger. Singh advertised spicy paneer burgers as a Big Mac alternative, and indigenous restaurants made every meal a political choice. Use Indian brands and reject U.S. ones. Powerful impetus came from a generation anxious to establish their own cultural taste, not force. Beijing's 300% tariff plan gained legitimacy from the campaign, convincing local audiences that eliminating McDonald's was about sovereignty, as well as economics. Local backing gave political cover to limitations in New Delhi, was contentious otherwise. Memes, hashtags, and social psychology transformed a tariff discussion into a popular movement. The effects go beyond culture. McDonald's loses sales, income, and Wall Street's confidence with every Shanghai or Mumbai customer. As these tales propagate, they undermine a corporation and reduce America's brand influence. When burgers become battle lines, the real question is whether America's soft power can withstand the boycott generation, not McDonald's. Tariffs don't end it. Ends with a question. China and India, with over 2 billion people, have politicized a fast food chain. They did more than hurt the economy. America's soft power and cultural dominance are threatened. McDonald's, once a symbol of burgers and fries, is today a battlefield of images, habits, and pride. Shanghai has expanded burgers beyond dinner. It tests loyalty. Mumbai's Happy Meal is now weighed against identity. Washington policymakers recognize that a trade war is becoming a symbolic war. Experts say this could be the start of a protracted battle where cultural icons become weapons, brands, movies, sports, and cuisine are used for influence, and every boycott, hashtag, and consumer choice has far-reaching effects. Deep implications. If coordinated political pressure can unsettle McDonald's, a $200 billion enterprise, what happens to other brands if soft power is taxed, regulated, and labeled as foreign interference? How can America maintain its global presence? And most importantly, what happens if a burger company symbolizes East versus West? Because this story goes beyond trade. It is about power shifts written in billions everyday choices, not policy documents. McDonald's may endure and evolve, but food will never be its focus again. The question is whether Washington will protect its global emblem or whether McDonald's will be the first victim of a new battle of symbols. If you liked this analysis, save the video, because this conversation is only starting. Share it and leave your comments.